So, hello and welcome to the 1% podcast. Today we've got Lee Wells on. Now, myself and Lee have been working together for the last 3 to 4 months. By my account, he's been absolutely flying and smashing it. And I think typical but a powerful journey insofar as recognised he wasn't taking care of himself as best he could, wanted to take some action around that, but couldn't quite see the wood for the trees with the demands of work, life, time, family, the usual story. But equally, it's always powerful and helpful to hear from the horse's mouth because sometimes what can seem hard and insurmountable really isn't. And Lee's a big proponent of that. So I wanted to get him on to chat, and he's kindly taken some time out of his very busy schedule to do that. Lee, before we kick off, do you want to just introduce yourself, who you are, what do you do, a bit about you?
Yeah, so like Luke says, I'm Lee Wells. I'm the co-founder of a logistics freight forwarding business in the north of England. I'm father of one, married last March. And yeah, I've been working with Luke since just before Christmas 2025. So yeah, about 4 months.
All accounts a busy boy.
Yeah, it can be pretty stressful. Obviously with logistics, there's so many things that sort of factor in, like a current war that's happening at the minute. It's been pretty interesting, but yeah, it's good though. It varies every day. I've been doing it for sort of 20 years now. So yeah, just taking your stride. I can't think of doing anything different, to be honest.
Yeah, and especially I think I'm biased as well because I work for myself. Once you've been working for yourself for a while, you sort of, I think you almost make yourself unemployable, right? So it's like you want to make it work.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that.
So on that note, let's kick off the conversation then. And I think the best place to start is rewinding a few months into the past. You reached out around just before Christmas time, I think, but you've been following me for a little bit before then, and possibly seen a couple of other gents that I'd worked with go through the process. What was going off with you back then that made you think, right, I want to reach out and have a chat with a coach, somebody like me?
Yeah, so sort of going back to the very beginning, I'd followed you on LinkedIn for a while. Some of the posts resonated about how you sort of factored in family life, busy people. You weren't going to sort of say you need to do this for 10 hours a day and do this, do that. So it sort of resonated in that way. I've seen an old contact go through the process and do really well. And to be honest, he was one of them people that you thought that you wouldn't expect him to get help. So then seeing him like, well, okay, do you know what I mean? It sort of resonated a bit further. And then one post you put on was like, everything's okay, and that sort of resonated with me because I was like, everything's on fine on paper. I'm doing well. The business is doing well. I'm happy, go lucky, blah, blah, blah. But something inside was just sort of saying, there's a bit more that I can do here. And then I spoke to my other half and then sort of reached out and thought we'd have this conversation and see what this is all about. And then the rest is history, so to speak.
I think what you said there, and that's of course the whole "it's all okay," or the reason a lot of my content talks about that because it's common, right? But I think it is a super common narrative, and it's this real thing of like, well, I've got everything I said. I want a business, lovely missus, kids, all that, but I just don't feel quite my best, and I know there's kind of more here that I can sort of unlock, but I don't quite see or can't quite see how I make that work and join those dots, right? And it's one of those weird situations where there's nothing on fire, but equally there's nothing absolutely peaking either. So it's like, well, and sometimes you can get stuck in that trap a little bit where, oh, it's all right, we just grind it out, we just carry on. But I think life's too short to just be, okay. There's a phrase that I use, it's that I'm not depressed, but, and it's like, well, so if your barometer is not being depressed, like I know you must say you said that, Lee. It's like I think we want to raise the bar a little bit, right? And so I think it's like not just being in that, just getting through versus actually I'm excited and I'm thriving and I'm really like relishing life, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think like I say, there's just an itch there sort of saying that I can do a bit better here, or especially with myself, I think I've been sort of back and forth with fitness and stuff. So like your program sort of really helped me lock in thus far for like 4 months, and I feel loads better as a result.
And what do you think was the, I guess, if you were to look in it back now, like your biggest sort of struggle or frustration with your situation? I mean, I guess it's hard to point on one thing. That's the whole point, right? But like,
Yeah, I think like
the biggest thing.
Sort of in the past, I'd sort of gone hell for leather with stuff, sort of really took myself into something, and then after a couple of months, sort of tapered off, and then got frustrated, and it's been like a cycle of, excuse me, sort of getting go, then work would get busy, so life would get busy, and then it's like, how do I manage and keep this up? And then it'd fall away, and then sort of repeat that cycle, and they're sort of getting a bit frustrated in terms of not really maintaining something for a long time. Whereas like what we've done with you is small but little steps. So like now I'm working out pretty much daily for half an hour rather than doing an hour all out, feeling like crap for 2 days because I'm sore, ache everywhere, and then just can't think of anything worse but train again. So now it's become a sort of maintained and enjoyable process. Whereas, yeah, I'm not setting the world on fire by doing this workout that's going to change the world, but over time, I feel I look loads better as a result because I've managed to be able to keep it up for 4 months.
Totally. And it's that consistency, right? I think what you were describing there historically, both for yourself, Lee, and a lot of the men I work with, and I think it's a common one as well, which is that all or nothing mentality. And I think especially because the type of guys that are in the program that I work with are driven, self-starting, either business owners or quite senior, very, very, like from a commercial perspective, a career perspective, focused and get after it. And that's powerful and helps, right? We want some of that. But I think when we apply it to ourselves too hard, you get this pendulum swing where you're just going back and forward with yourself, your habits, your behaviors. And so you can't ever really get the consistency that you would like, or it feels like you're playing a game of whack-a-mole with yourself. You'll focus on something for a bit and then pop, work comes up, pop, that falls over, back to square one. Oh, I'm a bit more present and balanced on my phone, but actually I ain't got time to exercise. Oh, I'm exercising when I can't do that, but then work comes up. And so it's this being pulled from pillar to post. But I think that stems from there's kind of ways that we used to take care of ourselves when we were younger that with a load less responsibilities, I think kind of were fit for purpose. But then we try and apply that same approach like right now with business, kid, marriage, the list goes on, right? Keen golfer, that's also important too.
Yeah.
You forgot that at the start. And it's not fit for purpose, but I think we still keep trying to ram that thing in, and it doesn't work. And that's where you get that stop-start thing. Where I don't have the traction that I want. And what you're describing there is actually, if we just take a step back and look at things a little differently, small things can have a very profound impact. And I think it's fair to say when we first started, you were a bit like at first, like what's this? Like,
Yeah, like this. Like,
I was
the
like,
first 3 things you said, I was like, "Is this it? Like, this is like a doddle." But then you said to me, "But you're not doing it," and I'm like, "Okay, fair enough." So then when you start doing it, it adds up. Like say before it becomes a habit, and you sort of chipping away. And another thing that you said as well early on is like the daily-ish concept. So that don't beat yourself up if you have a busy day and your kids are busy and life's busy and you just don't get chance. Just get back to it the next day rather than chucking everything out and thinking, "Oh, I've not done it, I've failed." Just forget it and start again.
Yeah, that start again Monday concept, and then it isn't Monday; it's like 3 weeks later. Whereas you go, okay, well, and the thing, I think the thing is as well, because we, the royal we, like you, hold yourself to a high standard in a lot of areas in your life. You kind of hold a standard like that with yourself. It's like, right, I'm gonna get fit. Use exercise example, and so I'm gonna do an hour in the gym every day, and then one day it doesn't happen because life happens and work, and Trump decides to bomb Iran, and it impacts your business. Fair enough. You miss it, but then you're like, well, fuck it, what's the point? And like you almost blame yourself now in that scenario, that's out of your control, right? And there's an impact for that, and that's okay. But then you can start again tomorrow, like,
Yeah.
and it's being able to play with that. But equally, if the approach that you're putting in is short, snappy, and doable, you're okay. Well, I can't get to the gym for an hour. Can you do 20 push-ups just to blow the cobwebs out? Chuck yourself under a cold shower. Keep your phone down. Give your missus a kiss before you start work. Yeah, I can do that. Right, let's do that instead. All of a sudden, you feel a bit better. But I think our ego, at first, because what's the point in that? What's that going to do? But actually, what you recognise is done daily-ish, relatively consistently, it delivers quite outsized results, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's like it's just doing something rather than nothing. It just like the effect's massive. And like I say, it gets you back on that roll, that sort of consistency again, like just doing a little workout to say, right, I've done that, and kick on, and then build it from there and just get more and more and more. And then, like I say, before you know it, you're doing the workouts that you probably should be doing, but you can then do them daily because you're fitter, stronger, more consistent.
Yeah, I mean, we're both Northern, right? So it's that oats better than no. So,
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah.
So I think also what was interesting with you, Lee, I think when we first spoke, you were definitely along the lines of looking at things more of like, it's my mindset, it's my headspace, it's the work-life balance, it's all that needs addressing. And that was true, right? But I think interestingly with you, once we got you a bit more consistent with some of the more practical physical behaviors, and because it's not all, it's not just that by any stretch. We need to look at all of it. I think perhaps, and to speak to, you didn't quite realize the impact of getting a bit of a better control over that would have on all the other pieces, right? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. One thing that stood out is like when we did the DeMartini's values, so the exercise about sort of what's important to you, and it become apparent from that that I need like something to focus on out of work personally. So like having the training, and having that to focus on to then sort of decompress a bit, then kicks me back into life a bit. And I think actually looking back from when we first spoke, I was probably more frustrated with myself about having the lack of consistency and stuff. And I think, like I say, by doing all the processes made me realise that, yeah, that's probably what was wrong. And it's just the cycle of failing every time. Not failing, but starting something, getting busy, stopping, starting again, and just never really kicking on.
I think that's what you're speaking to there is like there's certain standards that I think we all have for ourselves, be it conscious or sort of subconscious. And so there's things that you want, part of your identity that you want to be doing things for, right? And sometimes in life, like you're describing, they can drift, be that exercise, be that diet, be that how you show up in your presence at home, be that, you know, how you show up at work, you know, procrastination, whatever, all the stuff, right? And you've got standards that you want to keep to yourself in terms of how you are on top of that. I think if there's an area where that standard is repeatedly not being met, or you keep your words failing or missing the mark on it, no one else sees that, but you do. You know exactly what you are and aren't doing, and that's where I think that real inner frustration and sort of pissed offness can come from. Because it's like, well, like I've committed, I'm going to do this, and I'm not doing it, and then something happens and it knocks it over, and you don't do it, and like all of that from a self-esteem perspective doesn't feel good, right? And
Yeah.
the insidious thing is no one really gets to see that. You're kind of for yourself letting yourself down on those areas, and it doesn't matter whether it's right or wrong. It's your standards for you, and so I think once we start to course correct that, be that what you put in your mouth, be that how you move your body, be that putting your phone down when you talk to your missus, be that having a different conversation with someone at work when actually you put it off for 3 weeks, like all that stuff, right? Like if you start to own that, you know that's the standard for you, and I think that feels much better. And just generally, you start to feel a bit better because you're kind of meeting a standard that you want. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. And I think like just the small steps of doing it as well. Like it doesn't have to be anything massive.
No.
It's just doing something consistently over a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. It just soon adds up, and then all of a sudden you're becoming quite disciplined in your approach to everything, really.
And I think that's where being on top of your own personal habit, standards, structure, whatever you know, however you want to look at it, that's where I think you can then deal with the situations and stresses that life throws at you, right? Because if you're on, you know, stretching the metaphor, but like you're on solid ground for yourself, well then when life throws crap at you, you're better able to deal with it because you are keeping standards for yourself, you're making commitments to yourself that you keep, and you've got that disciplined approach. And I'm not just talking about the physical stuff or all of it. Well then when, you know, there's a massive geopolitical issue which impacts your logistics business, you're like, well, this is shit. What are we going to do about it? And
Yeah.
it says, oh my God, it's another thing because there's 10 other things that you're not doing for yourself on top of that. Like the exact scenario is identical. It's you and your state and your ability to deal with it. And that's why it's really important. And that's why I really, truly believe proper self-care, looking after yourself from a habitual behavioral perspective, like has a profound impact on, of course, how you show up at home, which is really, really important, but also your work performance. Like it will, the version of you at work is going to be much better if you're taking care of yourself because you can be objective, you're not going to react. You can be, especially when you're the head of the business, kind of like the captain of the ship and be objective and be the strategic person you need. I think if you're knackered, tired, run down, list goes on, of course you'll still get the job done, you're successful, but you're not going to be at your best. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, it breathes into all areas of your life. Really, you just show up better everywhere because, like I say, you've just got that grounding and backing that you've done it, and you're in a good place with everything. Really, so like I say, you're just in a better position to be able to handle difficult things.
Given now we're probably four or so months into the process, Lee, and like by your account, in a great spot. I think we've done some awesome work thus far. It's a work in progress, right? There's more to do. Me and you,
Yep.
all of us. What would you say has been your key learnings or takeaways from the process thus far?
Just the power of little and often, really. I know it sounded cliche and it's obvious what to do, but it really does help. Like the first week, like we said earlier, I was kind of uninspired in what he'd set, but it's the grounded, and you nail that, then you add more, nail that, add more, and before you know it, you're doing loads of things that are just benefiting you full stop. And it's not about sort of turning up on day one and doing everything all at once. It's about gradually building and then installing them into your life consistently. And that just turns into a much bigger thing, really. And to add to that, to contradict it, it's not about doing it every day as well. So it's about doing what you can when you can, really. And then it's the power of the daily-ish model, and it just adds up over time.
Well, there's two parts to that. There's the compounding impact of doing these things as regularly and being consistent with it. But then the, I guess, headspace and insight to stop and go on a day where life has thrown you a curveball, something different's happening. Well, what can I do in this scenario? And I might have to compromise what I normally would do, and that's okay because X, Y, Z's happened, and we keep going. But not only that, because you've been doing lots of stuff daily-ish, you're okay. Do you know what I mean? It's not like
absolutely, yeah.
2 weeks and then the last 2 years been a shit show. You've got like a residual background level of I'm in a good spot, and so when we have a curveball day or two, well, it's all right. We can roll with it because we've built up slack in the system to be able to do that too, right? And so it kind of feeds into itself, right?
Yeah, and my mindset is you kind of earned it as well. So if you have a day where you have a takeaway or you don't train for whatever reason, you've got 4 months behind you to say, well, you can have a day off.
Just a bit, yeah.
Yeah. So like it's like I say, it's earned it. I think it's that confidence that you've been doing it, and whereas in the past it's been like I've not been doing it, so I can't do it because you're putting it off and you're making excuses really. Whereas you've sort of put yourself in a position where you can do what you need to do.
Well, I was on one of the calls yesterday actually. One of the gents was talking about he hasn't been able to get his head around the journaling yet because he hasn't found a time, whatever else. I said, right, well, I'll tell you what you could do now. You could turn your camera off once I finish talking to you, and you could write down 4 things on a piece of paper, and you've journaled. And he was like, so I'm not being a prick, but like it's a fact. And so that's the, that what can you do concept, right?
Yeah.
And it's describing exactly that. It's like, well, it doesn't have to be huge, massive or rocket science. And with the right mindset, you can always do something. But I think what happens is our ego gets in the way and goes, well, what's the point? Or can't. Or it's like, well, that would have more benefit than not. And 99% of the time, doing a thing, no matter what, if it's relative to what you want to do, well, then you'll be okay. So, like, let's say I made a commitment to myself, I'm going to exercise in the morning. Someone's gone ballistic, kid's been up all night, knackered, right, I can't exercise. Can you do 1 push-up? Of course I can. Do 1 push-up then. You've exercised. You've met your standard. On you go.
Yeah.
It sounds really trite, but I think like that's where we can keep that consistency, commitments, and all the rest of it. And that mindset, we just use an exercise example there. That approach to how you look at something can play out everywhere. And that becomes more powerful because then no matter what in the scenario, you're putting yourself in a situation where you have agency. Okay, this has happened. That's really shit. I can't do the thing I wanted. Well, how can I, more holistically keep that commitment? Well, I could do that instead. Okay. Or you just go, you know what, I am absolutely fucked and I'm consciously deciding not to today, but I know I will tomorrow because I'm on top of my stuff. That's also good. But it's just done in a different headspace and place, right?
Yeah, and I think that's what resonated with me a lot when your content before was the fact that you get life. Like you see stuff on Instagram, Facebook, whatever, and it's like, you must do this, you must do that, you must train 10 times a week. Whereas you're a bit more synthetic in terms of people have got a life, people have got other commitments. It's not all about living in a gym or eating whatever all the time. It's
just every 4 minutes. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's just having a way that supports you rather than you giving your life to something that, like, it's just unattainable really over a long term.
Well, the way I like to look at it is it's not like we're doing something separately and then trying to shoehorn life on top of it. It's the other way around. It's like life is happening and what can we do within it? Because I think the problem is if you approach the situation like we're never going to have any problems, there's this perfect scenario, I can just do all that. That is so fragile because we all know that's not what happens. Kids get sick, presidents invade countries. Like, fun things happen, like you go on a stag do, holidays, like there's an infinite amount of things that are going to happen in your life that can impact stuff, complete curveballs. So if we optimize for that happening and how we can approach that, well, then that's when you can be consistent. And that just means sometimes you have to raise and lower, I guess, your expectations of what's possible for yourself within the given scenario. But if you're able to be flexible with that and let go of your ego, you can do that. I think where people think is it's like, oh, I'm just giving myself a pass on being slack. So it's like, no, I think if in a scenario where all the stars are aligned and you're going, oh, I can't be asked, that's different. In my experience, that rarely happens, actually. And if we actually look at what's going on, there's always a rationale or a reason for why it hasn't happened. So it's about let's understand what that is, address that, and give you tools to be able to approach the scenario situation in the future. And that's also where you can learn from problems, right? Because something goes wrong, good. What do we do about it? Not dickheadly do the program better, because that helps no one, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And like I say, that things we've had days over the past 12 months where it's been a shit show. Like the one day where my daughter fell over and it was chaos, blah blah blah. But I approached it in the right way, sort of problem, everything's fine. Then you train, and then you look about it, you sit like laid in bed at night, think actually, yeah, that could have gone a different way today. And actually, you've shown up and done what you need to do. Everyone's fine. You've looked after yourself. Crack on next day, basically.
That's the bit that I love about what you just said there, Lee, for yourself, but just generally when I'm the gents that I work with, I've said this before, I don't know if I'm saying on the podcast, but like what I get the biggest buzz out of a coach is that, like, of course we never want your daughter to have an accident, to be sick, or that's not, I'm not saying this at all, it's shit. But like you going, well, I know I would have dealt with it and I dealt with it better and I'm okay and it's okay. So it's like, that was shit, but I'm all right. That for me is what I buzz off the most, because that's proper resilience, right? It's like, there's a scenario there where there's a version of me that would approach it in one way and there's a version of me that's approached it in a very different, very positive way. It doesn't mean it's not shit and worrying, but you're able to operate at a different place. I think that's what we want to optimize for. And it's not that we want to walk around wishing hardship on ourselves, but it's like those sort of things happen. It's like, well, how are we going to deal with it? And in that scenario, you dealt with it really well. It was difficult, stressful, and scary, but you came out the other side in a good spot. And also meant you give the people who were really fucking important there, your daughter and your missus, what they needed, right? Versus you being operating in a slightly compromised way, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Like in the past, I would have just gone quiet, stressed, sort of shut down communication-wise, and it would have just made everyone worse because they would have been on edge around me, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, that's the value, really, I guess. And then when you add in the training, feeling better, looking better, it's just like an all-rounded process. It's just, yeah, it should have done it years ago, really, but life's life.
Well, we're here now. What is it? That phrase, don't look back. You know, so you're looking back, just don't stare. But I think what's powerful as well, mate, is the fact that some pretty profound impacts and changes in what is a relatively short space of time. Like we said, we're still in the process, there's more to do, and it's exciting, but done from a very powerful, excited place versus like, you know, dragging yourself through. And actually, it's been you who's done the work, right? Of course, you're in a coaching program in the process to help with it, but like you're the one who's shown up, you've taught, you put your hand up when you struggled, and off the back of that, we are where we are. If someone was listening to this podcast and they were kind of on the fence about working with a coach, doing the sort of kind of stuff that I do, and whether it's to work with me or not doesn't matter, but like they were listening to what you're saying, that resonate with where you're at. I'm like coaching, live coaching, that kind of stuff. What's that about? What would you say to someone in that situation?
I think just you've got to explore it. I think there's no one on the process, as I know, that have had a negative experience from it. Everyone seems to be moving forward, and it's benefiting all areas of their life, not just their fitness, not just their sort of mental health, not just their well-being, whatever. I think people are just sort of doing well from it. And like I said, there's a lot of people on there that you wouldn't think could do it. There's all walks of life in terms of like, you've got people that are employed, people that are running businesses, people that are doing well, people aren't doing well. You've got everything, all spectrums of people. And it's good to hear from them as well, because you get a different perspective of how people attack things and train and stuff like that. So I think if you don't explore, you don't know, I guess. But from my point of view, it's been beneficial all round. So it's a no-brainer for me.
Thank you. It's a pretty good endorsement if there was one. But also one thing, you're really into your golf, right? And I think you wouldn't bat an eyelid about having a golf coach, and other people wouldn't. And so,
yeah, it's exactly that. I mean, like I said, yeah, I've got golf tuition. I see a business coach as well. That's really helped. So like, this was just like the final piece of the puzzle, really.
Yeah.
Like I say, you put stuff into things that I suppose golf's about myself, but aren't about myself. Like the business coach, you just sort of like expected to do that, get help, do better, whatever. So, but actually, the most important piece is yourself, really. And if you can do better, then everything naturally falls into place as well.
Totally. I know, of course, I'm biased. I'm going to say that because I'm a coach, right? but I would totally agree. But also, I think the interesting thing to say, like the golf coach analogy is right. I bet you've had some situations where he's gone like, move your wrist half an inch, move your toe that way, and then it's like, woof, right? And I'm sure you're more experienced now, so there's nuance to that. But like, you probably had situations like that, like, oh my god, and it's like that was obvious, but yeah, until you could see it, it was, but you couldn't see it. And I think a lot of coaching, even with like your personal stuff, like some of the conversations we've had with the stuff that we've done, often like, and I've been the same with my coaching in this setting or therapy. I'm like, when they say something, I'm like, are you fucking kidding? But like, you can't see it, and it's the most obvious stuff. But the point is, without that other perspective, it's difficult to see yourself, right? And just like with the golf bit, you can't see that bit, and you go, oh, okay, right, yeah, whoom, there we go. And I think for me, it's the same thing. It's like it doesn't need to be life shattering or totally revelatory, but it's being able to have another perspective to look at yourself, enable you to change in a positive way, right?
Yeah, like I say, the stuff that you're sort of telling us to do is not reinventing the wheel. Like you kind of know you've got to do it. There's nothing in there that sort of shocks you and think, oh, I've never heard of that or thought of that. The fact is, you just don't do it regular. So having this process and that bit more structure and discipline, you do it, like I say, daily-ish. And over time, the results are sort of compounding and massive. So like I say, it's not hard to do. It's just doing it in a structured way.
Totally. Well, Lee, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. I really appreciate you taking the time, mate. So thank you very much. I know anyone who's listening will have got a lot out of it, and I certainly have. If anyone is listening and watching, they are interested in having a chat with me about how I can help and what we do in the 1%, like we have with Lee, just drop me a note in the comments or find me a DM. Otherwise, have a fantastic week, and we'll see you all next week. And thank you again, Lee.
Cheers, mate. Thanks a lot.